Picture this. You're out on the water, you found the perfect spot, you've mixed up some high-end, top-shelf bait. You've hit your mark so precisely that every trophy fish in the lake should be heading your way. But an hour goes by, then two. Your rod tip hasn't budged. Or worse, you're only catching dinks when you're hunting for a monster. Sound familiar? Now what if I told you that at this exact moment, a massive fish is sitting just 15 feet away looking at your bait and swimming away in terror? That's right. You aren't feeding the fish, you're scaring them off. Today, we're exposing the #1 mistake that turns your expensive bait into a literal underwater repellent. And it's not something you'll find on the back of a bag at the tackle shop. You ready for the truth? To understand why this happens, we have to think like a fish for a second. Forget the human logic of more flavor is better. A fish's senses are on a totally different level. Their sense of smell is thousands of times sharper than a dog's. Their lateral line picks up even the smallest vibrations, and they see the world completely differently than we do. In the fishing world, it's all about pressure and survival. Those big trophies, whether it's a massive carp or a weary old slab, didn't get to that size by being reckless. They're suspicious. They don't just lunge at everything they see. Any unnatural change in their environment is an instant red flag. We think we're setting a buffet, but if that buffet smells like a chemical lab or looks like a neon trap, no self-respecting trophy is coming anywhere near it. Let's break down exactly what we're doing wrong. Let's start with the most common mistake out there, what I call the chemical attack. A lot of anglers live by the more is better rule, dumping half a bottle of scent right into their bait. Standing on the bank, it smells great to us, strawberry, fruit punch, or garlic. But let's look at it from the fish's perspective. Water is much denser than air, and scents behave differently down there. When you overdo it, the concentration at your fishing spot becomes overwhelming. To a fish's sensitive receptors, that pleasant aroma feels more like a chemical burn. It's the equivalent of getting blasted in the face with pepper spray. The fish swims in, takes a hit to its senses, and bolts in a panic. This is especially critical in cold water, where scents disperse much slower. A perfect example is overloading a feeder with concentrated dips. Instead of attracting fish, you're creating a dead zone around your hook that they physically cannot stand to be in. The second mistake comes down to the basic physics of oils and fats. You've probably heard that oils don't work well in cold water, but do you know why it actually scares the fish off? Imagine you're using a heavy fish oil or hemp oil when the water temperature is below 50 degrees. That oil doesn't disperse. Instead, it congeals into thick droplets or a greasy film. When a fish follows your initial scent trail and starts to feed, those fatty particles coat its mouth and gills. Instead of a meal, the fish is hit with pure discomfort. It struggles to breathe because its sensory receptors are clogged with cold grease, causing its feeding reflex to shut down. The fish senses that something is off, that the food is heavy, unnatural, and potentially dangerous. It'll leave your spot just to clear its gills, and chances are it's not coming back. The irony is this exact same setup would absolutely crush it in the summer, but in the cold, it's acting like a total repellent. Point number 3 is all about the color of your mix. Most guys completely underestimate how much the bottom contrast matters. Think about it. You've got a dark, silty bottom, typical for most lakes and ponds, and then you drop a few pounds of bright yellow ground bait right on top of it. Now you've got this massive glowing patch down there. Sure, small panfish might find it interesting. No, for a big, cautious trophy carp or a heavy slab of a bream, that spot screams danger. Against a light background, a fish becomes a sitting duck for predators. Pike and walleye are just waiting for that. For a trophy fish, the instinct to survive is way stronger than the urge to eat. To them, that bright patch is like a spotlight in a dark room. They're going to stay in the shadows, lurking on the edges where their camouflage actually works. You can sit over that neon sign for hours, and while the fish might circle the area, they're never actually going to commit to the spot. The fourth issue is particle size. You know the saying, bigger is better? Well, in this case, and the opposite is true. If your mix is nothing but fine dust, breadcrumbs, and ground-up biscuits, you're just creating a massive cloud in the water. That cloud is like a magnet for baitfish. Small panfish will swarm the area instantly, creating a total frenzy and constantly picking at your hook bait. Big fish hate that kind of chaos, but more importantly, there's actually nothing for them to eat. A large bream has to be efficient with its energy. If it has to work that hard just to filter tiny particles out of the water, the math just doesn't add up. It's not worth the effort. It'll simply swim right past you in search of a real meal, like mussels, bloodworms, or large grains. A fine, dusty mix is great if you want to keep a fast pace with small fish, but it's the number one thing that will keep you from landing a trophy. Point number 5, spoiled bait. This is a classic trap on those long, multi-day trips. You prep your corn, peas, or mash, leave the bucket out in the sun, and by the next afternoon, it starts to turn. It gets that sharp, sour smell. A lot of guys think, no big deal, fish love fermented stuff anyway. But let me tell you, that is a massive myth. There is a world of difference between controlled fermentation and straight-up rotting. When bait goes sour, it completely tanks the pH level of the water at your spot. It starts pumping out carbon dioxide and toxins, making the water around your feed area acidic. Fish can pick up on those chemical changes from dozens of yards away. To them, it's a biological red flag. The food is toxic and dangerous. You are essentially taking a prime fishing spot and turning it into a dead zone. If your bait smells off, get rid of it. Toss it in the bushes, but whatever you do, do not throw it in the water. Mistake number 6, overactive ground bait, or what I call the underwater geyser. Many manufacturers pack their mixes with buoyant ingredients like crushed hemp or coconut flakes. The idea is to draw fish in from a distance, but when there's too much activity, it creates total chaos on the bottom. Everything is fizzing, rising, and sinking. While aggressive carp might find this appealing, cautious trophy fish, like large bream or tench, are often spooked by that kind of unnatural movement. Food shouldn't be jumping into their mouths. If your mix is too active, you aren't creating a feeding carpet. You're creating a messy column of debris. Large bottom feeders prefer inert bait, food that stays pinned to the floor and waits to be eaten. To a big fish, all those rising particles usually signal a swarm of small fry causing a mess rather than a stable, reliable meal. Part 7, improper hydration. Dry ground bait is the absolute bane of beginners. Sure, the mix might feel moist and hold a ball shape, but once it hits the water, that ball just explodes. It either bursts mid-water or the second it touches the bottom. What happens next? The current carries your feed over a massive area. Instead of concentrating the fish, you're spreading them thin. Rather than pinning them down to a tight 2-foot spot, you've got them chasing crumbs across the entire riverbed. Competition drops and the bite becomes patchy and inconsistent. Big fish want to hold on a compact spot. If your bait washes 15 feet downstream, the school is just going to stretch out and move on. Properly hydrated bait has to stay in the feeder until it hits the bottom. Only then should it start to work. Bait mechanics are the secret to controlling the fish. Mistake number 8 is all about scent. Not the scent of your bait, but the scent on your hands. See, a fish's sense of smell is incredibly sharp. Think about it. Did you ever smoke on the way here, put on some bug spray or sunscreen? Maybe you filled up the gas tank this morning. To a fish, things like nicotine, repellents, and fuel aren't just smells, they're red flags. It's like an air raid siren going off underwater. When you pack a feeder or bait a hook with those hands, you're transferring those chemicals directly into the water. Insect repellents are the absolute worst. They contain ingredients that trigger a full-on panic response in fish. If you spray yourself down and then reach into your bait bucket, you might as well pack your gear and head home. You won't see a single big fish. Always, and I mean always, wash your hands thoroughly with water from the lake or river before you touch your bait or tackle. Number 9 is what I call the fullness factor. And yes, you absolutely can overfeed fish, especially if you're using high-protein mixes when they aren't very active. If you're dumping pounds of pellets, boilies, or heavy mashes into your spot during early spring, late fall, or right when the weather shifts, their metabolism just can't keep up. The fish will eat a couple of big chunks, feel satisfied, and basically go into a food coma. They might stay right on your spot, but they aren't going to bite. Your hook bait just gets lost in a mountain of free calories. Remember, the goal of your chum isn't to give them a 3-course meal. It's to ring the dinner bell. You want it to smell great and taste even better, but keep the actual nutritional value low. That way, the fish keep grazing and searching without ever getting full until they finally find your hook. Mistake number 10, ignoring the current during your initial bait-up. It's basic geometry, but it's something a lot of anglers completely overlook. You find a sweet spot on the bottom, clip your distance, and start tossing out those big feeders. But if there's a current and some decent depth, that feeder is going to drift as it sinks. The bait washes out and lands several yards downstream from where you actually measured your spot. So here's the problem. You're fishing in one place, but your bait pile is way over there. The fish are sitting right on the feed, while your hook is stuck in a desert upstream. Big fish rarely move up past the bait trail. They're either right on it or slightly downstream. You'll think the fish aren't biting, but the truth is you simply missed the dinner table. You've always got to account for that drift to make sure your hook lands right in the middle of the action. Number 11. Leaving out the animal protein when it's actually crucial. Most of us are used to fishing with grains or pellets, but for bream, carp, and especially tench, protein is a major part of their diet. We're talking bloodworms, maggots, or chopped worms. If you're fishing a spot that's naturally rich in food and you only offer them bakery goods, they might not even recognize it as a meal. Think about it like this. If you're used to eating steaks and someone offers you a dry cracker, sure, it might smell okay, but it's not dinner. Adding the juice, which is just chopped worms or spikes, sends out a massive signal that high-protein food is on the menu. That's what drives big fish crazy. Without it, you'll find yourself catching the small stuff while the trophies ignore your spot, choosing to root around in the mud nearby for the real thing. Mistake number 12 is all about salt and sugar, or more specifically, getting the balance right. We often forget that salt and sugar are nature's original flavor enhancers and preservatives. In the wild, fish are constantly hunting for minerals because fresh water is naturally low in salt. Adding some salt to your bait in the spring or in cold water can act like a total magnet. But be careful. If you overdo it, you'll get the opposite result. A mix that's too salty actually dehydrates the fish, making them feel off and driving them away. The same logic applies to sugar and molasses during the summer. If it's too sweet, it's just overkill, but the real danger is fermentation. If you mix up a sweet bait in the morning and fish through the summer heat, that sugar will turn into alcohol and vinegar by lunchtime. The secret is moderation and understanding the seasons. Think salt and spices for the spring and sugar or fruit for the summer. Just don't go overboard. Number 13. Noise while baiting. Most carp anglers are familiar with spomming or using a bait rocket. It's effective, but it's incredibly loud. If you're fishing in shallow water, say 6 feet or less, a heavy feeder or a bait ball hitting the surface is like throwing a brick into the water. Big fish are extremely sensitive to those impacts if you're bombing your spot every 2 minutes. you're essentially driving the bigger, more cautious fish away. They'll just back off to a safe distance and wait for the bombardment to stop. Sometimes it's much better to bait heavily once and then stay dead quiet for an hour or two, only adding tiny amounts as you go. Silence is a major part of a good baiting strategy, especially on wild or highly pressured waters. Mistake number 14, using tap water to mix your bait. It might seem like a small detail, but it's a game changer. A lot of guys like to prep their ground bait at home to save time at the lake, so they just use water straight from the faucet. Big mistake. Tap water is full of chlorine. Remember, chlorine is literally designed to kill bacteria and disinfect. To a fish, that smell is a massive red flag. It's the smell of death. It'll completely overpower any attractants you're using, whether it's vanilla strawberry or anything else. And even if you let the water sit out for a while, that chemical footprint doesn't just disappear. When you toss that bait into the lake, you're introducing a harsh foreign chemical into the environment. It's unnatural and aggressive. Always, and I mean always, wait until you get to the water and use the local source to mix your feed. That water has the natural microflora and the exact pH level the fish are used to. It's familiar, it's safe, and most importantly, it doesn't have that terrifying chemical stench. Number 15 is a classic mistake, a mismatch between your feed and your hook bait. Picture this, you're chumming the area with pure fish meal pellets, but you've got sweet corn on your hook. It just doesn't add up. Or maybe you're using a sweet biscuit-based ground bait, but you're fishing with a bunch of worms. Now, once in a while, a bit of contrast works, but more often than not, big fish are hunting for whatever scent is dominating the feed bed. If you've laid out a carpet of hemp and corn on the bottom, you need to have corn, or something that looks just like it, right there on the hook. Think of fish as underwater vacuums. If they suck in something that tastes or smells completely different from everything else in the pile, they'll spit it out as a reflex, like it's a foreign object. The rule is simple, feed what you fish. It's a basic principle that way too many anglers overlook when they start overcomplicating things. Mistake number 16 is the vacuum effect and species competition. Sometimes your ground bait is so fine and aromatic that it draws in a massive school of aggressive small fish. There are hundreds of them darting around like crazy and vacuuming up everything in seconds. Now, a big bream is a slow, methodical feeder. He'll swim up, see this chaotic mob of youngsters swarming right in front of him, and he just won't want to deal with the drama. He's not comfortable in that crowd. Your job is to weed out the small stuff. How? Use a larger particle size, get rid of the dust, and make your mix stickier and heavier. You want it to sit on the bottom like a rock, making it available only to the fish with mouths big enough to actually swallow those larger chunks. If you don't use your bait mechanics to filter out the small ones, the big fish will never get a seat at the table. Number 17. The lack of competition for food. Think of it as the flip side of the coin. If you dump too much bait and spread it thin over a huge area, the fish have no reason to fight for it. They'll just cruise around, picking up a stray grain here and there. They're in no rush, they're full, they're relaxed, and the bite is going to be sluggish at best. The sweet spot is having just enough bait on the bottom to spark a feeding frenzy. You want a crowd of fish and very little food. That's when the get it before someone else does instinct kicks in. In that state, the fish drops its guard and hits your hook hard. The real art of baiting is finding that perfect balance, drawing them in with a massive scent trail without actually overfeeding them. You're basically creating a sense of scarcity in the middle of all that aroma. Mistake number 18. Sticking to seasonal color stereotypes. Most anglers swear by the dark for spring, light for summer rule, but that's a major oversimplification. It all comes down to water clarity. In the peak of summer, algae blooms can turn the water into a thick, murky soup. When visibility hits zero, color stops being a factor. That's when scent and vibration take over. By fall, the water clears up, making dark ground bait much easier to spot, even in deep water. The real mistake is blindly following textbook rules instead of reading the conditions right in front of you. For example, a red mix might actually crush it in the spring because it mimics a cluster of bloodworms. Stop following dogmas, experiment, and let the fish tell you what's working. Number 19. Ignoring the thermocline. This is more about water physics, but it has a huge impact on your baiting strategy. In the summer, water often layers out, warm on top and cold with zero oxygen at the bottom. If you're baiting the bottom of a deep hole where the thermocline has cut off the oxygen, the fish simply won't go down there. It doesn't matter how high quality your bait is, they're going to stay suspended in the mid-water, right above that cold layer. At that point, bottom baiting is useless, and it can even be harmful because the bait will just sit there and rot without any oxygen to help it break down. The mistake here is feeding the bottom when the fish are holding higher up. You either need a light, slow-sinking bait like a zig-rig setup, or you need to find shallower areas where the water actually circulates. And finally, mistake number 20, hunting for a silver bullet. A lot of guys think, if I just buy the most expensive bag from the biggest brand, the fish will practically catch themselves. But that's just passing the buck to the manufacturer. Look, bait is just a tool. Think of it like a hammer. You can use a hammer to build a house, or you can use it to smash your own thumb. Even the priciest mix on the market, if it's prepped poorly and tossed in the wrong spot at the wrong time, will get outfished by basic chicken feed in the hands of a pro who actually understands the water. The biggest mistake you can make is turning off your brain. You've got to read the bottom, watch the weather, and track how the fish are actually behaving. Dial in your mix for the exact situation you're facing. Your bait needs to solve a specific problem right here and right now. It's a tactical tool, not a ritual sacrifice to the fish gods. Fishing isn't a game of luck. It's a game of chess with nature. By now you realize that your bait mix isn't just food, it's a precision tool for controlling fish behavior. Scent, color, texture, and nutritional value. Any one of these factors can either land you the trophy of a lifetime or spook it for good. The big takeaway from today's video: stop feeding blindly. Every time you hit the water, ask yourself, who am I setting the table for, and what does this look like from the fish's perspective? Avoid overdoing it with chemicals, keep your bait fresh, and watch your scent. When you apply these principles, you'll see dead spots come to life, and those tiny nibbles will turn into the powerful rod bends of massive bream and carp. Thanks for sticking around until the end. If you recognized yourself in any of these mistakes, tell me in the comments, what's the weirdest thing you've ever added to your mix? Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and I'll see you out on the water. Tight lines!